Chapter 273 The Dongjing Lake Horde. Dongjing Lake was located close to the Yangtze Plain, which was in the north of Hunan Province. The Dongjing Lake was not a famous tourist spot, as this particular giant lake covering a surface area of over 40,000 square kilometers was also one of the three most dangerous lakes in the country. Due to its massive size, there were many ecosystems within it, which meant there were countless demon beasts calling it home. On top of that, the infamous giant reptile beast horde that had overrun Jinlin City treated Dongjing Lake as their base camp. After taking a flight to Kangning City, the closest city to Jinlin City, the 17 students from the Pearl Institute and Imperial College had no choice but to continue their journey on foot. Along the way, Qingqing the genius told everyone the situation of Jinlin City, and mentioned the pack. Mo Fan, on the other hand, was totally clueless about this world, so he could not help but interrupt when Qingqing mentioned the horde. Even though most demon beasts live in solidarity, there are quite a few exceptions, too. For example, the most common demon beasts in the southern province that prefer to stay in packs are the demon wolves. The Black Vatican might be the culprit behind Bo City's disaster, but they were actually using the demon wolves horde to do the dirty work for them. Most of them came from the demon wolves horde that resides in the Nanshan mountain range. With that in mind, the demon wolves horde is nothing compared to the giant reptile beast horde of Dongjing Lake. Qingqing explained gravely. Mu Nujiao glanced at Mo Fan when Qingqing mentioned Bo City. She took over when Qingqing was not actually answering Mo Fan's doubts. Basically, we categorize the demon beasts based on their scale. For example, if the number of grown-up beasts in a group reaches 50 or above, it would be described as a nest. When the number of nests of the same species exceeds 50, it would become a pack. If there are more than 10 packs, it would become a horde. Wait, hang on a second, let me do some calculation. Mo Fan extended his fingers as he murmured, 50 beasts become a nest, 50 nests become a horde, which means a horde would have at least 2,500 of them? That's right, a horde means there are at least 2,500 beasts in the group, not including the younglings, those in the growing stage, or the aged, basically excluding those that can't fight. Mo Fan recalled the calamity of Bo City. Not counting the three-eyed magic wolves, the number of one-eyed magic wolves alone easily exceeded 2,500, not including those that were battling against the military outside of the safe zone. There were at least 10,000 one-eyed magic wolves for sure, equivalent to a large horde. A beast horde usually has 2,500 to 10,000 beasts, with 1 to 3 commander-level creatures as their leaders. A force like that is definitely enough to trigger a blood alert. Jinlin City was on blood alert in the past. Luckily, most of the people were evacuated in time. Otherwise, it would have been a lot worse, Qingqing said. Qingqing, it's unnecessary to give such a clear explanation. Our friend Mo Fan has personally experienced a blood alert before, so he would understand what a beast horde would look like. Am I right, Mo Fan? Luo Song interjected with a smirk. However, before Mo Fan could say anything, an icy gaze immediately locked onto Luo Song, causing him to shiver. He immediately turned around and saw Mu Ningzhu, the ice goddess of their Imperial College, staring at him. Don't you dare use Bo City as a joke, Mu Ningzhu stated in a chilling voice. Mu Ningzhu had already returned to school when the calamity took place. She did not experience it firsthand, but many people from her Mu clan were killed. The entire Mu clan suffered greatly from the disaster. Luo Song had no idea that Mu Ningzhu was also from Bo City. He immediately pulled his neck in and shut up. Mo Fan was relatively amiable, thus he did not really care what the others were saying to him. His mind was still occupied with the thought of how terrifying a beast horde would be if a pack was already so destructive. Imagine a horde consisting of 10 armies of the one-eyed magic wolves that attacked Bo City. How terrifying would the giant reptile beast horde at the Dongjing Lake be? If Jinlin City had not evacuated early, it would have been a worse calamity than Bo City. A horde is just a small number of the beasts in this world. If the beasts were to unite to fight against us humans, I'm pretty sure it would be the end for humanity, Zhao Mingyue added. Okay, we get it. It's really annoying that we still need to listen to your brainwashing talk when we are on a mission. Let's focus on how to arrive at Jinlin City safely. We are getting further away from the safe zone. This trip is not going to be peaceful, Liao Mingxuan said impatiently. Liao Mingxuan was right. They were around 25 kilometers away from the safe zone. The military still had patrols keeping an eye on things at this distance, but that would no longer be the case if they were to venture deeper into the wilds. We should follow this abandoned railway. Song Xian was holding a map and pointed at the rails that were fully overgrown with moss. The rails had rusted with unnatural speed and were fully covered with weeds and moss. They led straight into the woods in the distance, surrounded by thorns and wild bushes. It was quite difficult to see the rail bed if they were not paying attention. The railway was once part of the safe zone. Since Jinlin City had been overrun, the part that led to the city was no longer used, so it was normal for it to end up in such a state. Either way, the railway was clearly the obvious path to guide them in the right direction. They would surely arrive at Jinlin City by following it. Let's make this straight. I have always been the leader of the team. Since the school has asked us to complete the mission together, it doesn't make sense if we don't appoint a leader for the 17 of us. I'm more than happy to take the role, and feel free to give me any suggestion. I'll decide the path we take, what to do when we encounter a beast, and when we should rest. Lu Zhenga immediately expressed his intention to be the leader. Xu Delong, Liao Mingxuan, Zhao Mingyue and the rest of the students from the Imperial College did not seem to be bothered by his words. It's not possible for us all to listen to you all the time. We'll be following Song Sha's order instead. You two will discuss how we shall work together, Zheng Bingxiao said. Sure, we can do that, Lu Zhenga said. They had come up with a basic plan, which was to follow the railway. The students taking part in the training were the elites among elites from both schools, thus their courage and strength totally outmatched the students who were in the military drills back in high school. With that behind them, they should be able to accomplish their mission with ease. Chapter 274 Monsters in the Tunnel. The railway was abandoned 15 years ago. Normally, it would remain hidden among the weeds, with no chance of seeing the sunlight again. Surprisingly, it had visitors today. Instead of a rail car, it was a group of students from famous schools, undertaking their training mission. The path was still usable, as long as demon beasts were not treating the railway as their bed. The journey had been quite smooth until the group reached a tunnel, naturally totally dark, which looked extremely spooky. I've just taken a look at the map. This tunnel is around a kilometer long. Based on how frequently we were stumbling into demon beasts along the way, this tunnel is most likely used as their lair. I suggest that we find another way around the mountain instead of making any contact with the beasts when we are clueless of their species and number, Song Sha recommended to the group behind her. Aren't you being too cautious? Who cares what's inside, we should just kill whatever we see. The tunnel is only a kilometer long. Who knows how much time we would waste looping around the mountain? Lu Zhenga rebutted. Don't be so scared, let's use the tunnel, Zheng Bingxiao agreed, thinking it was a waste of time. There was no guarantee that they would bump into a strong beast in the mountain, or not bump into one if they detoured around. All right, we'll use the tunnel, Song Sha nodded helplessly. I'll let the rock golem take the lead. If anything happens, it will hold the danger off for a while. Zheng Bingxiao summoned his rock golem while he was speaking. As Zheng Bingxiao finished his summoning, Lu Zhenga glanced at the clumsy creature and said with a hard smile, "It isn't even an advanced level creature. You stingiest of Rusti. Well, I guess a solid creature like that is enough to clear the path for us." Zheng Bingxiao scratched his head without explaining himself. The rock golem was 3 meters tall, its entire figure covered with sturdy rocks. Despite its slow movement, it was like a combination of a shield and bulldozer as it proceeded forward on the railway, clearing away the thorns and grass along the path. Those who are at the back need to be quite strong too, and it can't be a summoned beast. We need someone able to make a rational decision straight away if something happens, Lu Zhenga proposed. I'll guard our rear, Song Sha volunteered. You should leave the dangerous tasks to us. Xu Delong intervened courteously. Song Sha did not say anything. Xu Delong's primary element was earth, and so he was indeed a better candidate. The ones scouting ahead were Liao Mingxuan and Shen Mingxiao. Their primary element was wind, so they could respond quickly if needed. Behind them were Zhao Manting and Song Sha. Both were able to use brilliant light, illuminating the path ahead. It was obvious that the cave had seen no sunlight for a very long time. Zhao Manting and Song Sha had to cast a brilliant light every 10 meters just to light up the place and cleanse the air around them. They could not tell if the air were poisonous, but it would be idiotic to try and inhale it, since the place was filled with foul odors from rot, dung from the beasts, and lack of ventilation. What's it look like ahead? Nothing, just some strange-looking white pieces of rocks. It must be something that was left behind because of the construction. Keep going. Zhao Zhao, stick closer to me. I can protect you in case of an emergency. Mo Fan walked in front of Mu Nujiao, as if he were a reliable man looking after a woman in need. Mu Nujiao was wearing a tight long-sleeve shirt, which wrapped around her upper body closely. The pleasant scent from her body in such an enclosed space was exceedingly attractive. Each of her breaths felt quite arousing. Mu Nujiao rolled her eyes at Mo Fan and asked, "Aren't you supposed to protect your big wife?" Mo Fan wore a half-smile. Why didn't I retain my composure before, saying that in front of Mu Nujiao? When she saw his reaction, Mu Nujiao found herself asking, "How did you two meet?" "She used to be my neighbor," Mo Fan answered honestly. Her house was like a castle, with its own garden, driveway, and rows of mansions. Meanwhile, his house was a terrace under the mountain, but it could not alter the fact that they were neighbors. So she's from Bo City, too. That explains her previous reaction. Mu Nujiao recalled Mu Ningzhu's attitude toward Luo Song previously and nodded to herself. "It seems like you are enjoying your time flirting with each other. Please be careful, as you might not even know how you died if something were to happen. I did hear that many intermediate magicians died after being ambushed by demon beasts because they assumed they were strong enough. Some even died to poison. Therefore, as an intermediate hunter, I would like to advise you all to stay on alert at all times," Liao Mingxuan advised, as if he were more experienced than the others. "Oh, an intermediate hunter, absolutely impressive." Mo Fan laughed. Liao Mingxuan subtly patted the head of the little hamster sitting in his chest pocket with a proud look. His eyes vaguely glanced at Mu Nujiao, looking for her reaction. Mo Fan found it quite amusing. He did not tell anyone that he was an advanced hunter, and yet this guy was showing off. His partner was even a master hunter. Since he found out that a 12-year-old loli had already achieved the title Master Hunter, Mo Fan no longer had the nerve to mention that he was an advanced hunter, since it would be too embarrassing. "Mo Fan, don't you feel like something is watching us?" Mu Nujiao asked. She had no interest in the petty competition between the boys. "Mistress Mu, don't you worry. Based on my many years of experience hunting down beasts, there's nothing nearby at the time being," Liao Mingxuan said with squinted eyes. He finally had the chance to talk to Mu Nujiao, or so he thought. Suddenly, the little hamster in Liao Mingxuan's chest pocket straightened its back and let out a cry of alarm. Liao Mingxuan's smile froze instantly. His eyes quickly scanned the surroundings. "Zhao Manting, shed some light in that direction," Mo Fan said. Zhao Manting looked where Mo Fan was pointing. With a quick wave, he aligned the stars and brought forth a beam of light. Forward. Zhao Manting directed the light to the area beside Mu Nujiao. The golden ray lit up the walls of the tunnel, revealing the black vines covering above them. The vines spread across the walls like giant spiderwebs. However, through the gaps, they could see several pairs of eyes staring at Mu Nujiao, who was the closest to them, with great hostility. "Zhao Zhao, stand behind me." Mo Fan stepped forward. Mu Nujiao was no little girl. A breeze quickly rose around her, establishing a wind path allowing her to move faster. Fire burst. Mo Fan held his palm half open as a rose-colored flame ignited there. He hurled the rose-colored fire burst at the black vines on the wall. It rapidly burned them into ashes. The light of the flames lit up the area out of reach of the brilliant light, revealing the shadows of several hunchbacked figures who were holding bones stained with dried blood in their hands. Chapter 275 Waking the Beast's Nest. There were only 4 of the hunchback monsters. Since Zheng Bingshao's rock golem was clearing the path ahead, it did not detect anything out of place along the way. Therefore, Mu Nujiao, Mo Fan, and Liao Mingxuan, who were following behind, had assumed their path was clear. The tunnel was not wide at all, thus they should be able to notice any beasts easily. To their surprise, the wall of the tunnel had already crumbled. There was a giant gap hidden by the black vines, preventing them from noticing it at the start. Luckily, while Zhao Manting was lighting up the area with his brilliant light, it had also blinded the creatures for a second. Otherwise, they would have lunged at Mu Nujiao earlier. It's the cavern slaves. As expected of a genius, Qingqing was able to identify the beasts hiding behind the vines after only a quick glance. However, Mo Fan could not have cared less what they were called. As his flame exposed their location, he immediately followed up with a lightning strike from his left hand as a gift. The tendrils of the lightning strike were like pythons winding their bodies, racing rapidly toward two of the cavern slaves. The violet sparkle covered their entire bodies and the shock caused them to dance wildly, as if they were at a disco. Ma! A bleat similar to a sheep's was heard, but incredibly sharp and lacking any hint of softness. The cavern slaves leapt forward furiously. One of them lashed at Mo Fan's head with the giant bone in its hand. These creatures like to smash anything alive into meat paste. Watch out for the bones, they will crush your skull instantly. Ching Ching immediately reminded Mo Fan, "If you have the time to speak, please lend a hand by casting a spell." Mo Fan could feel his head aching. Fortunately, Mu Nujiao was more reliable. She altered her wind path and extended it to Mo Fan to speed his movement up. Mo Fan dodged aside and saw the bone stick itself deep into the spot he was standing at. The rail that it struck instantly bent into the ground. Mo Fan could finally take a closer look at the cavern slave's appearance. It had a stooped figure with bent hind legs. However, its front limbs were incredibly muscular, and together with its wrinkled skin, Mo Fan preferred to call it ugly instead of ferocious. Who knew how long these ugly creatures had stayed single, that their arms could be so brawny? They would lash their bone sticks at anything they saw, and the limited space that restricted their ability to dodge did not help at all. Vine lash. Mu Nujiao spoke as the cavern slave was about to hit Mo Fan. There were plenty of vines around, so her plant element was super handy. She easily summoned a vine whip into her hand and struck the cavern slave's legs hard. She did not end her attack there, as she seized the opportunity to tangle the cavern slave's legs up with the vine and hang it upside down in the air. The cavern slave let out a panicking scream while waving its bone stick wildly. It had only struggled for a brief moment before several lightning strike, wrath shocks landed on its body. A burning smell instantly filled the tunnel. Clearly, the cavern slave had paid a great price for acting on impulse, being electrified to death in a miserable way while hanging in the air. The one who attacked with the lightning strike was not Mo Fan, but the student called Ming Kong. He had used a level 3 lightning strike straight away. It was more than enough to instantly kill a weak monster which had lost the ability to defend itself. Ma! The cavern slaves where the wall had collapsed burst out screaming after witnessing the death of their comrade. The cries echoed through the tunnel. It was difficult to tell if they were cries of anger or fear. Either way, the creatures stopped their attacks. Just a few servant-class creatures, nothing to be afraid of. "Let's continue forward," Lu Zhenga said in an indifferent manner after glancing at them. Zheng Bingshao nodded. However, he quickly noticed pairs of blue eyes appearing in the darkness ahead. It started with a few pairs, but a few seconds later, countless blue dots began to light up the darkness ahead, so densely packed that it would cause one's hair to stand on its end. FK me, they were summoning their mates. Rumbling noises could be heard coming from both directions of the tunnel. Song Sha and Zhao Manting quickly cast brilliant light. As the tunnel ahead lit up, the group took a deep breath when they saw several more caves exposed as the vines disguising them were torn apart by the cavern slaves. They had assumed the vines were just covering the walls. More cavern slaves appeared, almost blocking the entire path ahead. Their blue eyes flickered furiously as the bone sticks clanked with one another, rising together with their sharp sheep-like bleeding. "Crap, we're right in the middle of their nests. There are caves like these behind us, too." Xu Delong yelled. The same scene was taking place behind them in the tunnel. The black vines were too thick, so no one realized that the walls were actually non-existent. "This is the cavern slave's nest. The white pieces of rocks we saw were actually the bones that they crushed." Zhao Manting realized. The group felt a chill down their spine. It's possible that they would end up just like white broken pieces on the ground. The cavern slaves were extremely cunning. They had waited for the group to venture deep into their nest before showing themselves to completely surround their prey. "Those with the fire element, hurry up and burn the vines on our sides. We are being flanked from our front and rear. We don't want to get flanked from the sides too. Everyone stay closer, we need to regroup. You will lose your life once you get separated." Chapter 276 Epic Battle Against the Cavern Slaves. There were 3 people in the team with fire element, Mo Fan, Song Sha, and Zhao Mingyue. The 3 immediately cast fire burst at the vines on both sides of the tunnel. Since they were using burning bones, the vines were burned away quickly. When the vines finished burning into scorched ashes, the group immediately realized that there were two other caves close to them. The cavern slaves coming from the front and the rear were scary, but they could still hold them off with their magic. A potential ambush right beside them was the scariest, since it would catch the group off guard, and the magic they cast would also be friendly fire if they panicked. Those in the middle of the group should try and eliminate the cavern slaves in the caves nearby as soon as possible. Lu Zhenghe shouted furiously above the noise in the tunnel. Mo Fan was quite surprised. Lu Zhenghe might be arrogant, but he knew what he was doing as a commander. He was most likely the person that told them to burn the vines down. Their priority now was to eliminate the cavern slaves in the nearby caves, as they could not be allowed to come close to the team. The biggest difference between the magicians and the demon beasts was not power, but the fact that magicians were way weaker when it came to close-quarters combat. A single swing of the bone stick would hit like a hydraulic hammer. Despite being elites in their respective schools, it was difficult for them to control the situation straight away when their lives were endangered all of a sudden. The student from the Imperial College called Xiao Feng found himself in an extremely dangerous position, as he was flanked by two cavern slaves at the same time. Bright Mirror Shield. Xiao Feng activated his shield in the nick of time. However, the cavern slaves were not as slow-witted as he had imagined. The bone stick that was aimed at his chest was repelled, but the other was aimed straight at his calf, where there was no protection. The bone stick made direct contact with his right calf, as Xiao Feng could not dodge in time. The horrifying sound of cracked bone rang out instantly. "Oh, help! Oh!" Xiao Feng screamed in agony, and before he could withdraw, his left calf received the second blow. His two legs, solid and muscular a few seconds ago, were smashed flat, leaving pulped flesh and bone behind. Blood was splattered everywhere, as everything below Xiao Feng's knees was shattered. He subconsciously crawled toward his teammates on the ground in extreme pain. It was shocking enough that he could still stay conscious, due to magicians having stronger minds than ordinary people. His calves had been directly shattered. Ice spread. As the group finally realized that Xiao Feng was separated from them, Mu Ningzhu was the first to react by casting her ice element spell. The layer of frost spread rapidly across the ground, turning the area where the two cavern slaves were into an icy white zone. The icy mist immediately covered their eyes. The ice spread won't be enough to save him. Peng Liang immediately acted as he was aware that the spell ice spread needed some time to freeze the target. By then, Xiao Feng would already be crushed to pieces. However, as soon as Peng Liang arrived in front of Xiao Feng, the movements of the two ferocious cavern slaves suddenly came to a stop. In just less than a second, the not-so-muscular legs of the cavern slaves were covered in a layer of ice. The ice spread froze their flesh first, before completely freezing the blood in their legs. It totally stopped the two cavern slaves from moving, and they cried out in anger. They were totally unaware of the ice spread climbing up their bodies, swiftly freezing them solid. A moment later, the only body parts that they could move were their muscular arms. They were turned into ice statues. Peng Liang opened his mouth wide, finding it hard to believe. Normally, the freezing effect of ice spread would need at least 4 seconds to work. However, Mu Ningzhu's ice spread had done it in less than 2 seconds. It was way too fast, even faster than those with a spirit-grade ice seed. "Ah! Oh!" Xiao Feng continued to scream in pain, before he was rescued from the jaws of death by Peng Liang with his fleeing shadow. "I'll take care of him." Bai Tingting was standing right in the center of the team. She was no doubt the one protected the most by the team. When Peng Liang placed Xiao Feng on the ground, Bai Tingting had already completed the casting of her healing spell. A light green drop of liquid slid off Bai Tingting's fingertip and was sprinkled on Xiao Feng's legs. The glowing liquid slowly penetrated into Xiao Feng's injured body parts. When the liquid finally covered his mangled legs, Xiao Feng finally stopped screaming in pain. "I'm providing you some relief from the pain. It will take me some time to heal you," Bai Tingting said to the pale-faced Xiao Feng. Xiao Feng wiped the combination of tears and mucus from his face. He had almost lost his life just a few moments ago, so he could not care less about his image. "Help the others first. I'm fine." The healing liquid was like a strong anesthesia. "Xiao Feng, are you all right?" Ming Kong asked in a worried tone, while casting a lightning strike. "I was almost dead." Luckily Ningzhu reacted quickly enough. Xiao Feng wiped the sweat on his forehead. He knew that now was not the best time to chat. They had to clear out the beasts on both sides as soon as possible. Otherwise, they would be in grave trouble. At the very front, Zheng Bingshao's rock golem stood no chance against the cavern slave's attacks. Only half of its body remained after receiving countless blows from the beasts. "Zhao Manting, withdraw your summoned beast," Zheng Bingshao said. Zheng Bingshao swiftly withdrew the half-crippled rock golem. At the same time, he could sense a strong watery mist in his surroundings. He looked back and saw Zhao Manting casting an intermediate water spell, summoning rolling waves like a dam had just burst, which surged forward with a great roar. The furious tide reached almost half the height of the tunnel. It dragged the cavern slaves that were closest to the group with it and continued to roll forward ferociously. The efficiency of an intermediate spell was instantly displayed. The number of cavern slaves coming from the front was the highest, and the rolling tide was enough to hinder their advance. "My turn," Song Sha shouted as she began to cast an intermediate fire spell on her wrist. Several cavern slaves were still trying to recover from the impact of the fierce tide when they were terrified by the approaching fiery fists. A bright glow lit the entire tunnel up. The beasts that could not dodge in time let out cries of agony as they were burnt into ashes by the giant fists, leaving only the stench of burned flesh behind.